All right. So let's have a look at what's coming up. We've covered the material for the first test. I think we've talked a little bit more in this class than we have in my other section of this, but I will remind you again that we've covered the material. Labs 1 through 7 definitely on test 1. I have to make up my mind about lab 8, and what I'm doing today, lab 9, is definitely new material, definitely not on the test. So 1 through 7, definitely covered by test 1. Lab 9, definitely not covered. And 8, I have to figure out. It will be spread out over 2 days, this test. And it's going to cover that material, either 1 through 7 or 1 through 8. Those labs must be done in order to be eligible for full credit. They're always eligible for credit until you get the final grade, but they'll be eligible for full credit up until the test. And since I'm really a sucker, it will be they're due by the midnight of the second day of the test. Okay. So you can do all the labs after you've taken both parts of the test. That would be very foolish, but you can do it and you can still get full credit for those labs. And it'll be also those homeworks. Okay, so now I put a homework 5, which is not due, because that homework 5 kind of goes with this week and lab 9. More people. All right. Okay. Sorry, back to it. So homework 5 gets sort of coupled, like that's due next week, and so is this lab 9, and the sort of nominal keep up the pace. And so homework 5 will not be due with the test, but it's effectively a practice test, or 2 parts of the test. So they were asking me this morning, I think you guys have asked already more than they have, but they were asking this morning, like, are there going to be multiple choice? And it was like, no, it's a programming test. It's like a lab. You'll be given a scenario, and then you will code to the scenario. And you can use my posted code and the labs that you wrote, and it's all sort of open things you find on the internet. And so here's, again, so these were previous versions of the test. And so here's this one where you enter, it's an awful lot like, I don't know, the potatoes or something like that. There's something you enter in an edit text. In this case, it's the number of carats of the diamond ring that you're going to buy. And then you use some radio buttons to give me some other choices. So when you're buying diamonds, you care about the carat, the color, and the clarity, and there's probably another C, but I don't know what it is. And then I give you some fake formula. Don't worry if the fake formula doesn't make sense. That's not your problem. That's my, it's so it will be, you'll have to design this layout. So in one of the 2 parts of the test, you will have to define a layout. It does not have to look pretty, but it has to, everything has to be constrained. Was there a question? Or? No, okay. So in one of the problems, you will have to design a layout. I was asked, like for radio buttons, like in radio buttons, we've done them in design, and we've done them sort of added dynamically in a homework. You would have your choice. So if you prefer dynamic, that would be allowed. If you preferred in design, that would be fine as well. So there'll be a problem on the test where you will design the layout, and there'll be points for designing the layouts, and everything must have, it'll be a constraint layout. There are other types of layouts that I will say make a constraint layout. And then everything will need to be constrained in the constrained layout, or you'll lose points if everything's not constrained. And you should give things IDs and blah, blah, blah. And then there'll be points for connecting the code version to the interface version. And there are different ways to do this. You can use tags, you can use their position in the radio group, any number of ways, however you do it, it's sort of open. And then there'll be lots of toast this out if they didn't enter a caret, if they didn't select a color, if they didn't select the clarity, if they didn't, if they change their mind, if they change any information, clear it out. Make sure they can only type a number up here, but make sure it can be a decimal number. So that's the sort of thing. So it's going to be basic interfacing and making the interface, and then the basic interfacing. So there'll be a problem test like that. I probably have some other old tests. If you nag me, maybe I'll produce another old test and I'll like put somewhere that you can try. But this one you have to do, but you don't have to do it before the test, but it would make sense for you to do it before the test. And then the other one, I will, in this one, I give an XML, so I'm giving you the layout. You can edit the layout. You can add or change IDs. You can add tags or something like that. Just because I give you an XML doesn't mean you're not allowed to touch it at all. This one's old. Like I wrote this a while ago, so this one will probably come up with some yellow and some red saying it really ought not be like that. This needs to be bigger, and that should be start rather than left. And when you get the test, it will be, I will have made it up more recently, and it will not have as many flaws. But in one of them, I'm going to give you an XML. I give you some text files to be read. I show you some images to be displayed. And so this time I give you a layout. So it's not so much, there won't be any points for affecting the design, or maybe small modifications. So maybe there's a seek bar here. Maybe I'll tell you to change the min or the max of the seek. So maybe I'll give you the seek bar, but tell you to change the min or a max or something like that. So this one has some spinner. I like my spinners, some text view showing some information, an image view showing me a picture of the restaurant. Here's a place where I read a text file and posted the content of the text file. And then some kind of seek bar to say I like that restaurant or I didn't like that restaurant, and some toasting. So nothing too hard, but and if I give you images and none of them work, then it's probably you. If I give you images and one of them doesn't work, that might be me. I might have given you a bad image file. I tend to have at least one bad file per test or something. So that's the sort of thing you are expecting. Down here, there's when they use the seek bar, you're going to toast out something with some ifs. So expect some, not anything too complicated in terms of logic, but you might have some logic stuff in terms of ifs and the slightest bit of string manipulation that might look almost exactly like what we've done already. Okay. So that's coming up. What I need from you is some input about other major exams you have coming up. So we're talking about not this week, probably not Tuesday, because I like to give a full week's notice.
Thursday, theory of algorithms class.
Okay. But that's easy, right? Theory of algorithms. Heidi's always a breeze. Yeah. So Thursday, you have a Highly thing. So it'll probably be the week after that, maybe the following week, the Tuesday and the Thursday or something. And just hope Highly doesn't give any other exams in any of his other things. All right. I won't necessarily remember that. So please send me like an email that just says, I have a Highly test, just like in the subject. I have a Highly test this date. Because I won't remember. But that's the information I'm seeking from you. So thank you. But I'm not going to remember. So email. And don't make me read the email. Put the whole thing in the subject. But again, Heidi's not the only professor, so he is a hard one. And other people are in that class, right? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to go over. So I talked about the test. They asked lots of questions about the test in the morning, but you would have asked lots of questions previously. So, but if you have any questions, ask away. Again, it's a coding, and just think of homework 5 as a practice test. And each part you'll be given a period for, so 75 minutes for each of those. So, so you should have a pretty good idea of what's coming. I'm going to go over, I just have one posted example today, which I'll start to go over, but I want to ask if there are any questions first for the recording. No. Okay, so let's start going over at 9. And 9, we're going to read a file, but it's going to be a JSON file. And so again, that's new material. So this should say new material, definitely not on test 1. Am I on the wrong section? I think I'm on the wrong section. 22. Same class, but there, yeah, now I'm on the right spot because that was their YouTube recorded from this morning, and you don't have a YouTube yet recorded. Okay. All right, so here we go. Horse racing. So this time, I modified what I've sent you. I just wanted to show you another way. So usually what I do is I just give you the files that I explicitly edited or added to the resources, pardon me. So that's what I normally do. This time what I did was I dug down until I got to the main folder, and then I zipped the main folder up. The main folder has most of the things that we touch, maybe not the Gradle, but everything else we touch, I think, is in main. And it's relatively small. You know, it's still got a bunch of files. It's not teeny tiny, but it's got usually the important stuff other than maybe the Gradle, and is small enough to get into an email. Don't send me stuff bigger than main, because then it takes, if it's too big, it won't get through the email system. If it's a little bit bigger, but it will get through the email system, but it will take me a minute to download and then another minute to unzip, and I'll hate you. So, but main is relatively small and will open up relatively quickly. And we'll usually have the things that we want. It will have the drawable resources and the raw resources and the layout and the code. So it's an acceptable thing in that it's small enough and has the important files. So this is sort of like either way, send me just the files you edited, explicitly edited or added to the project. And that's one way to go, or the other way to go is this main. And then if we do at some point, which we will, edit the Gradle, I'll say, and send me the Gradle. But I don't want you to go so far up in the list to grab the Gradle, because then it's a lot more files, so I don't want that. Okay. So this time I edited the manifest, but I put a comment in there. So one thing that we're going to do is have what's called a new intent. So you're going to be on your little emulated phone, and we're going to have a button on our app, and it's going to say, and we're going to have display information about racehorses. And then if they click this button, it's going to take them over to YouTube. This new intent is going to have YouTube on it, and they're going to watch a clip about that horse running in a race. And so we're involved in the internet, kind of. And usually when you put something, when your app accesses the internet, you usually need a permission. But in this case, we don't, because it's like a new intent in YouTube. We don't need the permission to access the internet. But I just wanted to show what it looks like in case you do, and that is here. So it's commented out, it's not really there, but it's coming that we're going to do stuff on the internet where we will need the permission. So I'm just sort of, I don't know, getting us ready for this. It's not yet needed, but so this is a comment right now, but if it weren't a comment, this is how you add a permission to say this app can go out to the internet. So we're not doing it yet, but it's coming. And frankly, it's like when I first did this, I thought I needed it because I was going out to YouTube, which is on the internet, but it turned out I didn't. Okay. So now what? Let's go into resources. Let's go into layout. I'm going to open that. Control A, Control C. Go to my resources, layout, and code, and paste that in there. And let's just, while we're here, look at what it does. So you see some red, that's because it's asking for a drawable resource, and I haven't put in the drawable resources yet. So that's a sensible complaint here. Here, there's some complaint about a margin end. It probably wants me to add a margin right for backward compatibility. They used to say right and left, and then they switched over to start and end. But they went for backward compatibility reasons. They often went both. So that's what that complaint is about. This complaint is we're going to fix, because we'll add the drawable resource. But what do we have? We have a text view that just says choose a horse. And that is the label for the spinner. And then we have the spinner, which will put a bunch of horse names in there, famous race horses. This is old data, so if you follow horse racing and you know who won the Triple Crown a couple of years ago, that horse isn't here because this is old data. Anyway, so here's a text view that's just a static text view that just says sire. That's the parent of the horse. I guess the father, I don't know. Here's a text view that's going to display the sire of a particular horse. So this one's dynamic. You'll see that I give, I keep like a fairly default ID if it's static, but if it's dynamic, then I use my prefix and a name that describes what's going on. So over in code, if I see TV, I'll know it's a text view. And if I see sire, I'll know it's to display the sire of the horse, the parent of the horse. Here's another text view, a sort of generic static one that just says trainer. And then here is the place to actually put the trainer. Here's the image view. I called it IV silks. IV for image view, and silks is the sort of the picture, like the uniform the jockey wears. So that's the pictures I have are of what the jockey would wear if the jockey were on that horse. Okay. And here's my content description, because it wanted a content description for accessibility reasons. And this isn't good yet because I haven't put in my drawable resources, but there's an image view and then a button. The button is going to take me over to YouTube. So I called it button clip. So it's going to take me over to a clip of that horse running on YouTube. Okay. So what else do I need putting this together? So that was the layout resource. Let me grab the drawable resource. Here are the images of those so-called silks, the uniform of the jockey. So I'm going to copy those, copy. And they are a drawable resource. So I'm going to paste them over here. Okay, so I edit the manifest, though I didn't need to, so I just edited the manifest with a comment. I copied over our layout, our normal copying of the layout, and I pasted the drawable resources in. Okay. What else is in resource? Yes.
For the second drawable folder, you don't have to create another directory.
I need to create a raw.
Okay.
So I'm getting there. Is that what you're talking about?
No.
No. What are you saying? In drawable?
Or for the images, we don't have to. There's already a folder.
There was already a folder for drawable. It will do some weird. It used to be in drawable that there were like 4 drawable folders and for different resolutions.
Okay.
And then it would pick, you would put low resolution images in one and higher and medium and high resolutions. And now you put them in one, there's one drawable folder and you right click on it, but it will say sort of behind the scenes, it will do a little bit of, well, that was a medium resource. So it does some of that work, but it's not in separate folders. But you may see a comment come up like, should we put it here or should we put it there? So it still does some of that thinking, but it's not a separate folder like it used to be. Okay, so we did the drawable. So here, this is a different version of it. It does have 2 versions. But over here, there was one drawable, I pasted them in there. It may go and create them later, but I'm not seeing it here. So I didn't have to create it. If I did create it, well, I don't know what would happen, frankly. Okay. So, so I just put them, I just made this the other night and I put them in drawable. They ended up in a separate folder, but I didn't do that. They did that. Okay. Let's peek. Hold on. I want to finish answering his question. I want to see if I go to C users, Blum, Android Studio projects. I'm on horse racing 2. I'm in app. No, I'm not in app. Yeah, I am in app. And source and main and resources. It made 2 here. I'm not seeing them in Android Studio, but it did create them. Okay. There was a question?
Yeah, did you just drag the pictures onto that?
I highlighted the pictures. Now I lost it. Downloads, horse racing, main resources. They were here. I highlighted them. I highlighted them, and then I got rid of that one. And then I copied them. And then I came over here and I right-clicked and hit paste. That's what I did. And if I'm doing it inside, even though that's like, oh, here are the images, and they go in a particular folder. If you go out to the file system and you do that, the Android Studio might not immediately register it. But if you do the copy and paste within Android Studio, they'll sort of be registered in Android Studio as a drawable resource. Is that, are you still a question or?
Yeah.
Yes. You asking me something else?
Yeah.
No, you're not. Okay. All right. And we're not done with resources. We have the raw resource. That folder I have to make. That's the folder I have to make. So I go over to resources, new directory, raw. So it was willing to make that sort of second version of drawable for me, but it doesn't make raw. I think I have to make. And then here is a file, horse racing JSON. And I'm going to paste that in there. And so there is a raw resource which has a horse racing JSON. All of my resources have that naming, strict naming rule of small letters, underscores, numbers. You can't start with the numbers. And you can have a file extension, but when you are naming the resource, you will not include the extension. And so that, I don't think I have any values. Just the name of the app, which comes automatically in the hello world. So that was okay. Everything else was, so we did the drawable, we did the layout. I'm not doing any map thingies. I did raw. I didn't have any values. Values at night is just more theme. And I didn't do any real theme stuff other than the default stuff. Let me copy over the main activity. Then we got to come back and talk about this JSON. Here's the main activity. I'm going to copy everything but the package. Go over here, main activity, paste everything but the package. Okay. And we may be ready to go. Let's see. Let's do a save just for the sake of it, and let's run. And I think I had already done the Gradley thing of 31 to 30 because I'm working on a lab computer. And this should, again, allow me to, that was from this morning, I think. So I did the same thing this morning. And then YouTube doesn't want to give up the ghost. So there is. There's the YouTube that won't go away because the YouTube is like that. All right, but here is the drop-down list. Changing the information of the sire and the trainer and this. And then if I say show clip, this is like a leftover, but if I say show clip, it should go. Usually it goes all the way over, not just down here. All right, I'll figure that out later. Let's show you what I can show you. Okay, let's look at the horse racing JSON. Okay. Now I have to pretend that there might be people, and it might be true. I don't know if it is or isn't, but I have to pretend that there may be people who have never seen JSON before. Okay, so JSON, this is the data file that was in a raw resource. JSON is the JS and JSON is JavaScript. The ON is object notation. And it comes from JavaScript, but it's been accepted as the sort of one of the standard structured data formats. So it has some data, and it also, in addition to having the data, describes the data. So we had some data I had some dog information separated by slashes. But if you didn't know that that information was about dogs, you wouldn't know that it was, oh, that's the name of a dog and that's the size of a dog. It's not, the information's not sort of described in the CSV. In JSON, the information is described. And it's also more extensible, that you can have various kinds of things. In JSON, a curly bracket means that we're dealing with an object. And then that object has a property called horses. So there's an overall object. Because I started with a curly bracket, that means overall, I'm talking about an object. Then that object happens to have a property called horses. And then the colon, that's the name of the property, and then I'm going to give you the value of the property. Well, that value of that property happens to be an array. A square bracket means array. And so an array means I have a bunch of things, hopefully similar things, and those things are objects, because I see a curly bracket again. So I have an object with a property called horses, which is an array. That is an array of objects. And so here's an object, and that object has properties like horse name, horse rank, horse rating, and those properties have values. So I'll refer to this as either a name value pair or a key value pair. And so these objects have horse name, secretariat, horse rank 1, horse rating 9.35. I put quotes around the numbers, so they're strings, but you're allowed to have things that are just numbers. So I worked with just all strings, and some of my strings happen to be numbers, but I can work with numbers. So it would accept numbers or strings. Okay, so here's an object, which is part of my array. Here's the next object, and then so I have object after object. Here's the last object. Here's the end of the array. Here's the end of the overall object. So my overall object had one property, horses. We need to understand the structure of the JSON in order to be able to make Kotlin read the JSON. There's some very generic things you can do that are much harder. So if you know what the JSON looks like, it's relatively easy to read. If you don't know what the JSON looks like, you have to say, try this or try that. You can do it, but it's more difficult. Okay, main activity, here we go. Connect interface to code. I'm going to show them the parent of the horse. I'm going to show them the trainer of the horse. I'm going to show them a picture of what the jockey wears. I'm going to have a button that supposed to go over YouTube. And I have a spinner, a drop down with horse names in it. I'm getting my information from a text file that is a raw resource. So I'm opening a raw resource. So context, resources, open raw resource, get this, I make an input stream. I'm reading the whole file. So you remember we read a file, all of it all at once when we learned how to read a file. Then we read the file one line at a time. And then we read the file sort of all at once, but we split it up into an array based on lines. So we sort of read 3 ways. We're going back to the original way to read the file. We're reading it all at once. I put my JSON, I made my JSON somewhat line-based, but JSON isn't line-based. JSON is, the delimiter is these curly brackets and colons and square brackets and commas. Those are the delimiters of JSON. Lines have nothing to do with it. I like lines, so it makes it easier for me to read. I should have probably some indenting that would make it even easier to read than what I have. But lines have nothing to do with it. So you could see it all bunched up all in one line, it would be the same JSON. That doesn't matter. Main activity, here I am. Okay, so I read all the JSON, back to the original, read all the file. So I read all the file. It doesn't know it's JSON, it just reads the file. It's just the text file at this stage. Now it knows it's JSON. Down in 38, we say take that text, and that's supposed to be a JSON object. If we were in Java, instead of Kotlin, it would say, oh, you better try to do that. What if it's, what if you can't read the text file? You better try to read the text file. What if it's not JSON? You better try to make it JSON. Kotlin just lets you fail. I like Kotlin. Sometimes you fail, but it's easier than all of this, what Java puts you through. Okay. Now here's where I needed to know that my JSON file started with an object. There's something like this for JSON object or something like this for JSON array. I looked at my JSON that I'm reading and I saw that it started with a curly bracket. So I saw that it was an object. And so that's why I start here with object. If you push me and you say, what would it be like if it started off with the array? I can do that. I'll make another example and post it, but you have to ask me. Okay, I might have one somewhere, I don't know, but if you ask me, I do things. If you don't ask me, I don't do things. Okay, so I take the overall text and I say that's a JSON object. So now in code, that's called my JSON underscore object, just a name I made up. I'm going to take that object, and remember in that there has a property called horses, which is an array. So I say take my object and get the array which has the name horses. So go get the property called horses, and it should be an array of JSON things. So now I have my array of horses. I want to make something to populate my spinner. So these JSON horses have ranks and ratings and sires and jockeys and pictures and all sorts of crap. I just want a simple little thing. I want to say horse number 1 was Secretariat and horse number 2 was, I don't know, Man of War or whatever it was. So I'm going to loop through my JSON array, and I'm going to make a simpler array of basically just strings to put into my spinner. So I called that horse rank and name because I'm going to include the rank and the name of the horse. I'm looping through my JSON array. And I say, go to my JSON array, get the object with an index of I. And then there's a property in there called horse rank, and get that string. So remember, I had quotes around my 1, 2, 3, so they were strings. So this says, go get the 1, and then go get the name Secretariat, and then go get the name 2, and get the name Man o' War, and I'm adding them to this array. Array, list, I don't know, I'm not being that careful, assuming. Okay. Then I have that thing that I can use an adapter. So I just made this in code. So this is a code array. So there's my code array, there's my style, and here's my array adapter. Remember, we have 2 ways to work with the array adapter, sometimes from a resource array, sometimes from a code array. This was a code array. Here's me changing the style of the dropdown. So you'll see if you look at this dropdown, they're sort of spread out. They're spread out here. All right. So that spread out is from this line 56. Okay, and then here's the populating the spinner with the horse names. Then here's my spinner event. I get 2 main things. I get the view, which is when the thing drops down, that little word, and that is the view. And then I also get sort of basically an index. You populate a spinner from an array, so it has an index, and this is the index of the item that was chosen. And that's usually what I work with. So here I'm working, I just have some little toast to say you chose this horse, just to show that I can do it. And then I'm getting the associated information. So for the sire, the text view for the sire, I'm going to my JSON array. I'm getting the object of the array. I want the horse sire property, and I'm putting it to the text of the TV sire. Same thing, blah, 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 trader. I'm getting the silks. Those pictures were called the silks. That was a property in my JSON, was the silk. So here is here's Man o' War, and I already did it. I made a property horse silks Man o' War, man underscore o underscore war, all in small letters. So I've prepared already these resource names. So there is Man o' War, and here's Man o' War. So I put into my JSON a property that corresponds to my resource name. You might remember when we had dogs, I did not have a resource array. I didn't have an array for resource names for my dogs. There I was doing some string manipulation. I was taking border collie with a capital B and a space, and then collie with a capital C, and I was putting it all in small letters and replacing my spaces with underscores. I was creating the resource name. Here I have the resource name as an attribute in my JSON object. Okay. So here is what, and I have to change a resource name into an ID. So I'm trying to get an ID for my image view. This is not the ID of the image view, but the ID of the image that goes in the image view. Okay. So here is the horse silks. That is the resource name for the image. I'm looking in my drawable resources within my package. That gives me an ID. Once I have the ID, then I can set the image resource of the image view. So that's how I get as you change a horse, you see a new jockey uniform. If they don't do anything, I don't do anything. There was a button. If you click the button, spinner has a selected item position. Again, that's a way for me to get the index. I can get the selected item, which would be the name of the horse, but that doesn't really help me in this case. I want to go over to YouTube, so I want the YouTube code. So it's more useful for me to get the index. which is selected item position. So that tells me that Man o' War was the second horse, and so it has an index of 1 because it's 0 based. Here's me getting the YouTube code from the JSON array. My JSON array get JSON object using that ID as an index, getting the string with horse YouTube code. Always look at the JSON file. Okay. This time I said horse YouTube code, and YouTube was capital Y and T, capital T, and capital C. Next time I'll say YouTube code and I won't say horse. Or I'll say horse YouTube code and I won't capitalize the T in YouTube. Or I might call it YTC, or I might just say YouTube without code. You don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. I've known me for longer than you've known me, and I don't know what I'm going to do. So you don't know what I'm going to do. So read the file. I have all these students who think they can read my mind. You can't, not yet anyway. Okay. So read the file, find out what the real name of the attribute is, get the YouTube source. And then here's this code for going over to YouTube. I'm making, here's a new intent. And it's going to be going based on a URI. And here's my, now I'm going to call it a URL. Here's the https://www.youtube.com/watch?v=. That's the normal, you're watching a video on YouTube, that's the normal URL. And then there's some number, which is, or some string of numbers and letters, and that is what I've been calling the YouTube code. So that's what will take you to the particular video in YouTube about the horse. And I put that in a try, and that was that. So that's the end. So what are you supposed to do? Almost exactly the same thing. Few changes. Not lab 6, lab 9. So I have some JSON for songs, for kids songs. There's a title of the song. The title of the first song is The Muffin Man. There's a length of the song. It's 2 minutes and 7 seconds. There is a picture resource called Muffin. So over here, you'll see, here's Muffin PNG. I'll open it up in Paint. There's a picture of the Muffin Man that I stole from YouTube. And here's a YouTube code. You'll see I did not call it song YouTube code. I just said YouTube this time. Read the file. And then I have another thing called lyric. And lyric and pick almost are always the same. I can't swear they're always the same. They always seem to be the same. And that says muffin. And then here's a lyric. Here's muffin text. And there are the words to the Muffin Man. So you're going to display that information. You're going to read the JSON file. You're going to have the names of the songs in a spinner. You're going to, when the person chooses the name of the song in the spinner, you're going to have what? So the title's in the spinner. You're going to display the length. You're going to display the picture. You're going to display the lyrics. You're going to have a button that takes them over to YouTube to watch a clip about where they sing that song. If any of the lyrics are long, any of these files look long, 2 kilobytes instead of 1, I don't know. If any of these songs are long, then you might want it to scroll. These are kid songs, so they're not that long. Well, Old MacDonald goes on for a little bit, E-I-E-I-O. So you might want to go back to when you did your lyrics. You might want to scroll. You might want something in, what did we have before? We had a scroll bar. we had a scroll view, and then we put a linear layout in there, and then we put a text view in there. And you don't have to code scrolling, but you have to design for scrolling. So you might want to design the lyrics to be scrollable. So that's what you have to do. Are there any questions for the recording? Okay, yes.
I feel like I didn't follow for the manifest. You did change something?
I didn't, I'm hinting at things to come. I didn't really do anything with the manifest. So the manifest, I put something in the manifest, but I put a comment in the manifest. So it doesn't really do anything. So it's not needed at this time. It will be, so this using an intent to go over to the YouTube video does not require giving the app internet permission. Later on, we will need, when we need to give the app internet permission, then we will do that. It won't be a comment.
Okay. What about for the style, the theme?
I didn't do anything with the theme. I was just looking to see if that I talk about all the resources I should talk about. So whatever the default theme was my theme. I didn't do anything with that.
Okay.
So I didn't need this permission, but I put it in, and so to have it doesn't hurt, but it doesn't need it. So you didn't really need it at this stage. We will need it later. Any other questions for the recording? Stop recording.